sometimes. And the music industry, it turned out that the internet got fast enough to download songs pretty easily. There was no legal alternatives, and maybe they made some bad choices in how they reacted to that. But they're still trying to make the transition to a very different way of doing business or ways of doing business while they're under attack from piracy. And we can all highlight some of the mistakes that have been made, but still, it's a tough job. And Hollywood, I think, has watched what's happened in music, learned some things to do, some things not to do. But they're still trying to map this out. How do they make some of these transitions, some new business models, different platforms, allowing their customers way more freedom on when they want to watch stuff and how they want to watch it. And I think there's a tremendous amount of experimentation and thought going on that's going to be good, that's going to be really good, if you're a content owner.
Can I ask about the user interface of the personal computer for a minute? Vista has just come out, which is your best version of Windows you've done, has some UI improvements in it. You're about to do yet another version of the Mac OS called Leopard in the fall, which, from what you've shown publicly, at least so far, has some improvements. But fundamentally, these are still the kind of file icon, folder icon, drop-down menu. I know I'm minimizing. There's a lot of other things. There's gadgets and widgets and all kinds of other cool things in there now. But you can see that it's still all built on what you started with, what Xerox did research on. Is there in the offing in the next 4 or 5 years, is it possible there's a new paradigm for organizing the user interface of the personal computer? Let's leave cell phones and things out for a minute, but just the personal computer, Bill.
One of the things that's been anticipated for a long time is when 3D comes into that interface. And there was a lot of experimentation, sites on the internet where you'd kind of walk around and meet people. But in fact, the richness, the speed, it just didn't sustain itself. Now we're starting to see with some of the mapping stuff, a few of the sites, that the quality of that graphics, the tools and things are getting to the point where 3D can really come in. So I definitely say that when you go to a store, bookstore, you'll be able to see the books lined up, the way you might be interested in, or lined up the way they are in the real store. So 3D is a way of organizing things, particularly as we're getting much more media information on the computer, a lot more choices, a lot more navigation than we've ever had before. And we can take that into this communications world where the PC is playing a much more central role, kind of taking over what was the PBX, sort of one of the last mainframes in the business environment. That'll be a big change that'll come to it. And as we get natural input, that'll cause a change.
And what about this multi-touch stuff? It's really interesting. Obviously, Steve showed some of it on the iPhone when he introduced the iPhone. Steve Ballmer today showed a bunch of it with the Surface computing device. It happens, although it's not part of our program, that HP, which is a sponsor of this conference, has a multi-touch sort of display over here out in the foyer. Will this make its way
that Minority
into,
Report, this kind of thing?
Yeah, will this make its way into, maybe you call it direct manipulation of objects with your hands and your fingers. Will this make its way into mainstream, let's say, laptop computers as a new UI or an additional part of the UI, or is that just a
but go beyond the laptop.
Specialized devices?
Vision, software is doing vision. And so, imagine a game machine where you just can pick up the bat and swing it, or the tennis racket and swing it.
Yeah, we have one of those.
Yeah,
No, that's not it. You can't pick up your tennis racket
I see what you mean.
and
Yeah.
swing it.
Right.
You can't sit there with your friends and do those natural things. That's a 3D positional device. This is video recognition. This is a camera seeing what's going on. And in a meeting, like you're on a video conference, you don't know who's speaking when they're audio only, things like that. The camera will be ubiquitous. Now, of course, we have to design it in a way that people's expectations about privacy are handled appropriately. But software can do vision, and it can do it very, very inexpensively. And that means this stuff becomes pervasive. You don't just talk about it being in a laptop device. You talk about it being part of the meeting room or the living room or...
But on the laptop, the way that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is what we have is great, and we don't need any new big radical change. But when I turn on my laptop, whether it's my Vista laptop or my Mac laptop, you know, there have been improvements, but it's a lot like it was 10 years ago. It's much better. The graphics are better and all that.
You talked about that radical change.
You know, you have the mouse.
For both your companies.
You have the icons you move around. You have the, I mean, and you talked about what a big gamble it was in '84 to do that and then follow on with Windows. We still essentially have that approach, and I'm just wondering, is that going to change?
Touch, ink, speech, vision, those things come in, but they don't come in as a radical substitute. I think you're also underestimating the degree of evolution because you've lived with it year by year. You know, say we'd sent you away for 10 years and you came back and you said, wow, there's a search paradigm, and that's more at the center of how you find these things. There's tagging, that's more at the center of how you find these things. You know, the evolution is a very good thing. In fact, even in that evolution, the stuff we did with Office, there's this balance you strike where when you make a change, in that case the ribbon, you're going to have some users who feel like, oh, geez, I have to spend a little bit time to be brought along to that. You know, but there has been good evolution, but these natural interface things are the revolutionary change, and they'll be very revolutionary. That together with the 3D that I talked about.
Steve? I know you're working on something. It's going to be beautiful. We'll see it soon.
Yeah, you know,
you can't talk about it, but Bill discusses all his secret plans. You don't discuss any of them.
I know, it's not fair, but it's, I think the question is a very simple one, which is, how much of the really revolutionary things people are going to do in the next 5 years are done on the PCs, or how much of it is really focused on the post-PC devices? And there's a real temptation to focus it on the post-PC devices because it's a clean slate, and because they're more focused devices, and because they don't have the, you know, they don't have the legacy of these zillions of apps that have to run in zillions of markets. And so I think there's going to be tremendous revolution in the experiences of the post-PC devices. And the question is, how much to do in the PCs? And I'm sure Microsoft is. We're working on some really cool stuff. But some of it has to be tempered a little bit, because you do have, you know, these tens of millions in our case, or hundreds of millions in Bill's case, users that are familiar with something that, you know, they don't want a car with 6 wheels. They like the car with 4 wheels. They don't want to drive with a joystick. They like the steering wheel. And so, you know, you have to, as Bill was saying, in some cases you have to augment what exists there, and in some cases you can replace things. But I think the radical rethinking of things is going to happen in a lot of these post-PC devices.
I'm going to ask a more personal question. We have just a minute before we're going to open up for questions. What's the greatest, I'm not going to call this the Barbara Walters moment and ask you what tree you'd like to be, but what's
You would love to be Barbara Walters, let me just tell you.
No, I would not. What's the greatest misunderstanding, right, but thank you, Steve, about your relationship? I mean, you're obviously going to go down in history as history books already said kind of thing, but what's the greatest misunderstanding between your relationship and about each other? What would you say would be this idea of catfight, this idea of which one of the many?
We've kept our marriage secret for over a decade now.
Canada, that trip to Canada. Mm-hmm. Was there?
I don't think either of us have anything to complain about in general. And I know that the projects, like the Mac project, you know, was just an incredible thing, a fun thing where we were taking a risk. We did look a lot younger in that video.
We did.
You look 12 in the first one.
That's how I try and look.
He was 12.
But no, it's been fun to work together. I actually kind of miss some of the people who aren't around anymore.